Hello and welcome to Hackerang TV. This is your host Adil Bandukwala. I'm super stoked and chuffed to be welcoming you all today as we're hosting one of our most awaited live streams with Zerodha's E-team. To say that Zerodha has changed the investment landscape in India is an understatement. Since their founding in 2010, they have continuously revolutionized the way retail trading and investing is done by introducing game-changing products such as Kite, Console, Coin, and Varsity. Their success speaks to their vision. Today, over 12 million people use Zerodha as their trading platform of choice, making them the biggest stockbroker of the country. We're delighted to have with us today Nithin Kamath, the co-founder and CEO of Zerodha, and an inspiration to people across the world, and Kailash Nadh, a self-proclaimed hobbyist, tinkerer, and CTO of Zerodha, to talk about their journey so far, the unique challenges faced by their fintech startup today, and their love, obviously, for open source. Nithin and Kailash, welcome to Hackerang TV.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adil.
Awesome. We also have with us, like always, my friend and my India boss, Hari Shankar Karunanidhi, who's Hackerang's co-founder and CTO. Hari, as always, thank you for your time. Delighted to have you here as well.
Thank you for having me. Super excited about today's conversation. Even I'm waiting as well to see what are the answers we are going to get for the questions.
100%. You're not the only one, Hari. We had a little over 9,500 people sign in on LinkedIn to broadcast and listen to this live stream. And if y'all have any questions, if y'all want to say hi to Nithin and Kailash, go ahead and drop in a comment wherever you're tuning in from, whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. Put in a comment. If you have a question for them, go ahead and drop it here. And once you do, Hari and me will be able to flash it to Nithin and Kailash, and we'll go ahead and ask them. So also, if you think you have a favorite feature and you are Zerodha's customers and you feel you're using one of their products, whatever product it may be, if you have a favorite feature, drop that in right here so that we can show them your love and we can show them what are features that we really, really like at Zerodha. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started, but I'll just start by going ahead and welcoming a few people. So Pradeep has joined on YouTube. He's saying hi. We've got a lot of other people as well, but Pradeep's got another one saying he's been a big fan of Zerodha. I'm sure there are a lot more like that. What we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and get started, and y'all can keep sending in those questions. So Nithin, we'll start with you if that's okay. It's been a little over 10 plus years since Zerodha was founded on the revolutionary principle of making trading and investing available to all with no barriers whatsoever. We're curious, how did this idea come about? Was it a eureka moment one fine day, or was it born out of increasing frustrations with existing platforms back then?
Yeah, no, I don't think, when we started the business, we ever dreamt that the business will ever get here. The best case outcome personally for me was 100,000 users. So it was not 10 million users. So yes, I had started trading the markets very early. So I don't think Zerodha, in my head, Zerodha didn't start in 2010. I think in my head, Zerodha started in 1997 when I started trading the markets actively. And over those 12, 13 years of very active trading markets, interacting with other retail traders, we thought there's an opportunity to be a niche broker for very active day traders, right? And there was no technology back then. There was no cash, right? I mean, I barely done Excel, so we got very lucky that the NSE, the National Stock Exchange, launched like a free platform for brokers. I think we were the first ones to spot arbitrage opportunities of sort, which is, your tech was coming for free. Then, the question was, could you disrupt pricing? Even the pricing in itself is not like it's not like we invented a flat fee pricing model. The first discount brokers in the US started early 90s. The Charles Schwab Trades of the world. These guys did it at $5, $7, and etc. So we did it at 20 rupees a trade. And yeah, we leveraged the exchange's free technology. And looking back, I think starting 2010 was really like a brilliant timing as well. But if you go back to 2010, it was probably, you would have said it's a really stupid decision to have started a broking firm in 2010 when most brokers were going out, because after the financial crisis, 2009, 10, 11 were probably the worst years for stockbrokers historically in India, right? And not just in India, across the world. So there are a lot of right place, right moments, in this journey. And starting was not, it wasn't really a eureka moment of sorts. It was just, we were thinking we're going to solve problem for a small niche bunch of users, and then like I said, we were at right place, right time multiple times after that.
Well, right. I think I'll go with the next question, and this is something I wanted to ask you, Nithin. That there's this common debate in the developer community, like whether should he be a generalist or a specialist, and there are new terms which are coming up saying you're T-shaped developer, M-shaped developer, comb-shaped developer, and whatnot. I want to ask from you, like, what would you attribute for your success, like being a generalist or a specialist, and what would be your advice for the developer community who are confused about like what route they can take for their future careers?
No, I'm not the right person to answer what's right for developer community. I keep telling Kailash that, I think developers, good developers today are like X-Men of this planet. So if you're not one, I tell become friends with one. That's why I'm sitting next to him, right? So I don't know what you should be as a developer, but I can tell you what's helped me to be a decent businessman in my life, and that's been to be a generalist. I think it's about having curiosity to do and learn and do as many things as possible, and kind of compounding plays out not just with your money, but also I think in terms of your skill sets, right? And over a period of time, if you keep doing newer things, you keep getting better, and eventually, if you're at the right place, right time, good things can happen to you in life. So I would come from that school of thought, but not in the context of developing developers, but more in the context of business, life, etc. So if I am trying to get, like I have a 7-year-old son now, and my job really is to help him discover what he likes, love to do, and for that, you cannot just pick one thing and say, force him to love it, right? As in, you have to do a bunch of things to figure out what you actually love to do, and so it's kind of important to be generalist. So then you have enough, you go after enough opportunities to discover what you probably love to do in life. So.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. You have to be a generalist and then evolve your specializations.
Got it. And maybe you spoke about some of the skills you learn as you become a generalist. And could you maybe talk about, like, as you build a business, what are some skills you should be looking to learn? What are some skills you should be curious about as you start evolving a business?
No, I think the biggest skill set required for a businessman is really how to sell, right? And because you're constantly selling, right? I'm right now on this trying to sell myself and our business in a certain way, so, right? And so I worked in a call center for 3.5, 4 years, and I think I've learned most of my life skills, in terms of sales there, because I used to call folks in the US, make up this fake accent and try sell everything from a credit card to a mobile phone. So most of my life, most of my selling skills came from there. I did a lot of this direct marketing. I was part of this Amway, Gold Quest, and all of that, for a while, early on in my life, and very hard sales. It's really hard selling. And then so that I've learned a bunch of, like, for example, I think this whole creativity thing. I think music, playing sport, etc. Somehow, somewhere it helps you, and I know there's enough science to back it. So I've done like a bunch of tried to learn a bunch of instruments. I've played a bunch of sports. I like to believe that staying healthy, etc. also helps. The healthier you are personally, you can be sharper. When you're running the business. So all of this has helped in different times, and but like I said, you need one specialization though. You can't just be a generalist in life, right? As in, you have to, at the end of the day, pick up something that you love to do and just go as deep in it as possible. And for me, that's markets. Right? I've been, last, I don't know, 20 plus years, I might have spent 10,000 hours, on the markets, which is trading the markets. I really love interacting with customers, in the sense retail traders. So I used to run really large, Orkut communities and Yahoo Messenger groups, back in the day when, there was no, Discord and all of that, right? As in, and I used to interact with a lot of people in terms of, in my pseudonym of sorts, and I think there was a lot of intelligence built with all those interactions, right? I mean, which we keep giving credit, at Zerodha to a lot of, like, taking these gut-based decisions, but that gut-based decisions have come with a lot of experience and of 10, 15 years. It's not like that instinctive decision that comes with when you have no idea at all. Like today when we have to take some of these we run this Rainmatter, which is our fintech, like incubator fund, and we also have a climate fund. In some of these other spaces which is not trading and markets related, the guts don't work, because there is no core competencies built there. And but gut works very well when it is your area, your specialization area, right? As in where you spend decades together. That's where I think you can take instinctive decisions. It's very hard to take it when you're doing something random in life. So.
Awesome. Thanks for that answer. By the way, I would love to, at least I know you have to leave in some time, and when you leave, I would love to see your thank you in the accent. That would be fun. I don't know if you still have that skill. And for the folks who are on the call, Orkut was the social networking site before Facebook. Not sure. When I tell them about my interns and folks on the call, like they don't know what is the tool you're talking about. So yeah, thanks for that detailed answer. That was fantastic.
Cheers.
I almost smirked, Nithin, when you talk about Orkut, because that was something that we lived on when we were in university life. Before Facebook came, and then we all moved there. But Orkut was pretty insane and wild back in the day. And then you took us back memory lane to Yahoo groups and Google groups as well, because that's how interactions were happening then. Now, of course, there's Reddit and there's Twitter and then there's Discord and then there's Slack. But that was a very different world back in the day. And a follow-up question on, the Rainmatter Foundation. Curious to understand, how's the journey been so far? What the future looks like for you? What are you really excited about?
Yeah, I mean, so the thing is, so we never expected this outcome from the business, right? In terms of success, in terms of profits it can generate and all of that, and we've all, I think, personally, I think the core team, Kailash is a monk, I mean, he hardly spends on anything. I at least have some vices, I spend on some things, once in a while. But we realize that there is no real use of the money that for the business. There's nothing that the business can use this money for, and so we have decided that we're going to give back most of our success back to the society in two ways. One is supporting startups which are working on climate change and creating livelihoods and and green jobs and all of that, and also non-profits in the space. And the way we have structured this is, if there is any profits made from the profit investments, it goes back to the foundation. So we try to do this part-time for a while. Like I said earlier, I don't think we had the skill sets. I think the skill sets required to give back is very different to the skill set to make it, right? And we got very lucky to find Samir, who heads our foundation today, and he's been able to get together a really cool team, and we've started the journey over the last 1.5 years of supporting a lot of profits and non-profits. We're just getting started, so it's for us, it's like a learning experience. With every investment we do there, there's something new to learn. So hopefully we can do a lot more in that place.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that perspective and being candid with us, Nithin. We know you have to run. We'll let you go. But
sure. Thanks.
We'll put all our attention and focus on Kailash now, front and center.
Before he goes, to everyone who's watching, please check out worldsmosthandsomebroker.com. It's worldsmosthandsomebroker.com. Please check it out.
There was also a comment that came in which said exactly that. And I don't know if you all know Ronak Datta, but Ronak Datta says being the most handsome broker is key.
I agree. Yeah.
All right, Kailash, and everyone, big thanks to Nithin for coming in. And now we'd love to kind of talk to Kailash. Kailash, Zerodha's tech teams navigate a unique challenge every day, in my perspective. The possibility of new regulations forcing your codes and system to change overnight is something that is
Yeah.
testament. Can you recount such an occurrence at Zerodha, if at all? And how did you go about rallying your team to addressing it, fixing it, making it happen?
So regulatory volatility and regulatory uncertainty is really life here. So when you ask me to recount an incident, I can recount one from yesterday or 2 days ago or last week or last month. But I'll recount one particularly interesting one. Uh, so for decades, you just log into a trading platform and you click on buy for a couple of decades. Ever since online trading became a thing, you click buy to buy a stock, you click sell to sell a stock, and it's instant. And that is how it is today also. But if you've noticed now, if you click on sell, you have to do an authorization window pops up, and you have to authorize your stock being debited from your demat account at the depository level. So that came out in that change happened in March, in or around March, April 2020. And the first deadline was 10 days. And we got a circular saying you can't sell stocks like you used to sell anymore. 20 years, how it's worked for 20 years has to change in the next 10 days or 2 weeks. Now, that was quite a shock. And the whole industry was shocked. And we went back, asked for an extension, and we got an extension for 4 weeks. So every single trading platform, mobile app, web app, backend systems, processes, end of the day processes, how demat debits work, how bulk reconciliation works, absolutely everything had to change in less than 30 days. How it has worked for 2 decades. And we did. Uh, Thankfully, our systems were modular enough that when this really happened, we were able to tweak, change things without destroying ourselves or without imploding. And on the go live date, we went live, and there have been so many incidents and changes like this. So the risk of, and these are all regulations for a better future, really. They're all pro investors, just that the nature of implementation is always has a lot of uncertainty. Good regulations, but implemented with great uncertainty. So this regulatory uncertainty is really in our DNA now, and everything that we do implicitly we are future proofing for drastic changes that can happen at any moment. So it's a fact of life for us.
So by now, I think you all have pretty much defined systems and instances to figure out if something happens, then this is how we go ahead and fix it. And is that the culture and the norm going forward?
Yes, absolutely. So you here markets are all about uncertainty and volatility, right? So running a market linked company, running market linked systems is also about uncertainty and volatility. You cannot predict what's going to happen. We had 2 million users until Jan 2020. Now we have 9 plus million users. Nobody could have seen that. Not regulators, not exchanges, not us. Nobody foresaw that. But when it did happen, we adapted. Many other people in the industry also adapted, but the way we adapted was easier because we'd always incorporated this uncertainty into a system so that they were modular and nimble enough to be changed and moved around when when it hit the fan. So yes, this is how we operate. Every tiny little feature that we build is built with this in mind, these principles in mind, so that we are always ready for the unknown.
Right. I'm going to pick up the next one, and this is my I think two. I'm going to talk about these two blog posts which I absolutely love. I know you've written about these two posts, which is scaling with common sense, and it's a very apt title, given it's almost like common sense is not common anymore. So one you published in I think 2 years back, and one sometime recently. And first off, want to understand, like, if you have to recollect those two, and what are your top insights from those two. You speak about pragmatism over perfection, having a stable interfaces, and the 2021 is almost like very clear. Do the caching part. It's more go ahead and do this. And 2022, it's a lot more one level higher perspective on how do you build the organizations and what are the right things you need to put in place and so on. So could you if you have to summarize those two posts and how it evolved and what made you write that thing? It's an amazing article for any tech leader in an organization. Could you walk us through that, your observations in that, and how you have grown in those 2 years between your post one and post two?
So yes, post one had more concrete technology specific insights, really simple common sense things that could be incorporated into, technologies that we use daily. But, and like you said, post two was more abstract on how to think, what are the principles that one really has to use. So the overarching sense is really just that one term, common sense. If you have common sense, and if you figure out a way to write software, build technology, organize organizations with common sense from first principles, you don't need those two blog posts, because your blog posts and summaries which are suited to your organization will just naturally emerge from those first principles. So for me, the biggest takeaway was just that: use common sense. And really, uh, if you don't apply common sense, if you don't apply objective decision making, and the second post, I really stressed on objective decision making. There's a section titled "The Tyranny of Non-Tech Tech Leaders." So if you could have the best developers, you could have the most sophisticated infrastructure, but culturally, if your management, if the management in charge of key tech decisions, if they don't apply common sense tech first principles, if they don't have deep expertise on tech, then it all really goes to waste. There's nothing. I mean, you can't scale, you can't build a great organization, you can't be cost effective. So all the stuff that I mentioned in the first post, hands-on technical things, those are all meaningless if you don't have people, tech decision makers, who are in on it, who apply common sense, and who have deep technical expertise. So what I really have to say is just that if there's no common sense in the team, common sense in the management, and deep technical expertise in a tech team, in key decision makers, those two, the first blog post is completely irrelevant. So it's just that need to apply common sense, need to apply first principles, and technical decision makers have to have deep technical expertise. That's really the gist of those two posts.
What's your trigger to write that post? Like what made you I'm gonna share this knowledge with the world. It is an amazing post and it has helped a lot of tech leaders. So I'm just wondering what's the story behind that particular post?
I would say frustration and annoyance as a developer so we are in, our industry is quite archaic. I mean, thankfully it has, come a long way in the last few years, but a notoriously archaic industry with really legacy infrastructure. And stock markets went online, like I said, a couple decades ago, but technology from then hasn't really progressed. Even today, much of the underlying infrastructure that we use is quite ancient, not very well designed, and it has evolved. And when you deal with organizations in this industry, really large organizations that I don't want to name, as a developer, you get really, really extremely frustrated. I understand why it is so. I understand it's so trivial. I mean, don't use this technology. You can easily swap it out with that other technology. It'll solve all your problems. Physically, I know it can be done, but philosophically, in a large organization, I eventually learned why it doesn't work that way. Banks with unlimited money still are unable to make a decent net banking app. I've always thought you could just hire, a good design agency or a designer and get it sorted, right? So after being in this industry for almost a decade, I slowly and painfully learned why that is the case, and that it's a cultural, philosophical thing. It's really all about technical, objective decision making, politics, bureaucracy. It's not It hasn't really got anything to do with technology. So we did things completely differently at Zerodha. We used common sense first principles. We didn't know, like Nithin said, huge amounts of luck. We didn't know that Zerodha would work out the way it has. We didn't know it would scale, but we've been able to scale. We've been able to be profitable. We've been able to establish great profit margins. Everything. We have happy users because we stuck to our core first principles of designing tech and system software all the way back from 2013 when we started the tech company. Until now. And 2013, there was no roadmap, and we were not even on the roadmap. We just had a few thousand clients. We weren't even planning to build a trading platform. So, but all we had was common sense first principles. So we did technology the right way. And like Nithin said, we got lucky multiple times, but we were able to capitalize on external luck, market conditions or digital signatures becoming a thing so that people could sign up online. All of that because our systems were ready to be tweaked to the next level. Thankfully, because we'd always stuck to first principles. So the impetus behind that blog post was really the frustration that I'd built. I still get frustrated when I see a terrible API documentation from a large institution, or the fact that certain large financial institutions take, let's say, 6 weeks to give you one HTTP endpoint that registers one value and returns a 200 response. That is how it moves in this industry. And we defied a lot of those things. We'd worked over that pain, and we scaled. And people started asking, how did you manage? We have a really small tech team, just 33 of us. So people started asking how, why. And I figured a lot of this, there's a lot of things to say. And really the summary of it is that you just have to use common sense and not listen to status quo and not be bothered about what's hot or follow the trends. If you just stick to first principles, it's possible to build and scale a large organization. So people started asking, people started wondering, and I thought I'd share. Sorry, that was a long. I digressed.
Yeah, that's very.
You could probably sense my frustration with those, large institutions.
It's very, very helpful. The other question I wanted to ask is, as a startup, there is an exceptional amount of pressure to build and release new features as fast as possible, and there are teams which also prefer like building it slow and clean and quick. You recently launched the site Don't Build. It's a pretty simple logic to say, should you build it or not? It's like having just 5 sliders and to pick what are the factors you should consider. So how do you deal with external pressure, and how does your team go and picking and choosing features to build? Is that site your secret weapon internally, or did it come up as the processes you have? Could you talk about how you handle new features and new exciting things to build and building it the right way? What are your principles there?
So when you build things the right way, that it takes more time to build, I think is a bit of a misconception. If you've laid the foundation of your systems, your infrastructure, your product, if you've gotten the foundation right, then it is far easier to add new things and build them the right way. So on day one, if you're trying to build lots of things, it's most likely not really going to work out. You're not going to end up with a clean system. You'll probably have mounting technical debt. So how do we handle external pressure? We don't really feel that pressure. And I think it's possible to build that mindset where you don't really feel that external pressure. And external pressure is generally FOMO, right? The other organization built XYZ features, let's also build it. So that's quite prevalent, but should you even build it? So if you start asking questions like that, is this feature worth it? Is it really valuable to our users? Is it really valuable to us? Does it really truly add much value? How many people will use it? Features sound cool, and sounding cool is a very subjective thing. I could personally be excited about a feature, and I'm excited about many features. Nithin could be excited. All of us in the tech team, all of us get excited by many different features, but we have this process of objectively deconstructing every product idea, business idea, feature idea by involving everyone, not just the tech team, people who work with the tech team, the domain experts, And in the end, we arrive at a decision. It's not worth doing, but purely on the objective merit, not because somebody else built it. We honestly don't really care about that much anymore. In the early days, you know, it's FOMO. You'd be afraid. Is this decision right or not? But over the last 9 years, we've used this model of objectively deconstructing software business feature ideas, and not just software, generally business decisions also, right? To offer a new service, new financial service, or offer it in a certain way. We deconstruct everything. We debate. All of us sit together. We debate, and then we arrive at a decision. And over the last 9 years, we've found that this method has a really, really high success ratio. I mean, I'd say 90% plus success ratio. And this helps us. It helps us deal with pressure because you don't really feel pressure. All the stuff that comes in, you put it through this model and evaluate it objectively, and you don't feel FOMO because this same model works for that. And now we have the experience of knowing that this model really works, and we have 100 decisions or 1,000 decisions that have succeeded thanks to this model. So it's a mental exercise. It's a way of looking at things. It's an approach, not really a technology thing specifically, and it involves common sense and mutual respect between all the people involved, tech people, non-tech people, everyone working together and being logical. Yeah.
Got it. Got it. Cool. Thanks for that. That's insightful. Switching gears, I now want to talk a little bit about the technology inside Zerodha and things you use inside Zerodha. First one is about which is close to my heart as well, which is the open source software use and using open source software and contributing back to the open source community. There is a tremendous increase in the amount of open source software than the proprietary software, and you folks have been championing FOSS for a long time as well. What's the future of open source according to you? How do you think companies and startups contributing back, and what's your advice for developers who want to get into an open source community and get started with their open source career?
I think the future of open source is here. We are living the future with this entire stack on top of which we are communicating. Zerodha as an organization, pretty sure HackerRank as an organization, we're all built on FOSS. So the future is already here, and the largest forces and companies that opposed FOSS are now the largest purveyors and promoters of FOSS, because FOSS from a philosophy. It's evolved into a commercial model and a distribution model. You write a piece of proprietary software, the likelihood of adoption is low, quite low. You turn that piece of software open source. You open source it, and if it's good, the likelihood of viral adoption is really high. So even organizations that don't really care about the FOSS philosophy have adopted the FOSS model as a distribution model, as a business model. So very interesting time. Like I said, the future is already here. There are issues here also. Again, the classic issue of funding in FOSS. Some of the most critical FOSS infrastructure software is maintained by people who don't get funded or paid. Lots of fiascos recently. So those things will have to evolve. New models are emerging. It'll take time, but those things, some of those operational, financial, business model issues have to be sorted out. Governments are now openly talking about adopting FOSS because it's a no-brainer for governments. Self-reliance, especially in today's political climate globally, nobody wants to be reliant on nobody else. So I think they're also FOSS, not for its philosophy, but for its model. Certain other firms will find far greater acknowledgement and adoption across governments for political reasons, for reasons of sovereignty. And yeah, so future's already here. We'll just see things evolve in this future that's already here, many of these aspects. For new developers, I don't really have any specific suggestions of advice for FOSS, because if you don't work with FOSS technologies, if you are not familiar with FOSS technologies, I don't think it's even possible to find a job. No matter where you are, it's going to be a FOSS programming language. It's going to be FOSS frameworks that you're going to work on. So it's a given that if you're a developer, you will end up using FOSS tech, and which is great. If there's one thing I'd like to say to young developers, it would be that maybe you should also look into the history of FOSS and the philosophy of FOSS, not just FOSS as a development or distribution model, and just to build some historical context. It might just give you a lot more clarity in your work, in your personal projects. So yeah, try and understand the philosophy and history of FOSS as a moment and as a model, and as a philosophy in itself.
All right. Yeah. Reminds me, even in college days, this whole open source and following Richard Stallman, and how the kernel got built separately and then got to the next project, are all exciting stories. And now we just use it without like knowing that history. That's a pretty good advice. It brings back all the memories, and we try to even host Richard Stallman in our university during college days, because that's the big deal, and that was the cool thing that time. The next one I wanted to ask about is your programming language of choice, and of course Golang plays a big role in Zerodha's tech stack. Not just that, your GitHub profile, 8 out of 8 7-pin repositories is Golang, and that seems to be your go-to language as well. So I want to understand, how did you pick up Golang, and especially when you started using, did you had concerns like, is this language mature enough to get started? It's one of those newest languages, and you might have had your questions. It had its own pros and cons. So, and there is always a community waiting for better generics, better dependency management. There are things which are still not there. There are many other good things which is there. How do you take a bet on these new languages? How do you go about this?
It's the same process. It's like how you decide whether a feature is worth building or not. You have to deconstruct it and look at it objectively. To give some historical context, I was experimenting with Go, simple hello world stuff in 2013. I don't remember how I saw it, probably on a Reddit post. And in 2013 is when we started Zerodha Technology, and in two unrelated things. And 2014, we'd started building Kite, our trading platform. It was unplanned, but we had started, and the backend was in Python. And I'd written more experiments in Go from a purely, hobbyist perspective. It's a new language. It's super simple to learn. The entire spec is really easy to understand, simple syntax. So I'd been experimenting. I'd been writing little, terrible little hobby projects. And when we started working on Kite, there was this one piece for which Python didn't really seem like the right tool. And that is really key, right? Even though Python was a stack, it just felt that that was the wrong tool for this particular job. So users would log onto the platform, there'd be a WebSocket connection, and we wanted to stream live market data. And Python just didn't fit the bill. I tried out a few Python frameworks, Tornado, an event-based HTTP server. Tried out a few things. Then I tried out some Java WebSocket libraries. I actually tried out 4 or 5 different languages and frameworks to figure out which one suited the task best. So that hands-on experience, that looking at those things objectively, is absolutely key to technical decision making. And I remember finding a C++ library really fast, way faster than the other things that I tried: Node.js, Java, Python, and I knew some C++, not enough to build a clean, robust, scalable, critical system. But if it fit the bill, we'd figured we'd just learn C++ and write that, because that was the right tool for the right job. But C++ is a really complex language, and we didn't want to add that to our stack. And I'd built some basic hobbyist expertise in Go because I was writing hobby projects, and I figured I'll just give Go a try. But Go was a brand new language also. I think it was only like 3 or 4 years old at that point. The community was really tiny and was just a fledgling language. So I actually sat down and wrote the prototype. We called it Kite Ticker, and it worked. I mean, with my limited hobby experience of writing hobby projects, I was able to very quickly write a prototype, and it worked. Go has really simple to use but amazing concurrency primitives, Go routines, and for WebSockets and concurrent TCP streams, that is critical. And that experience just gave me enough confidence. So by then, lots of checkboxes had been checked off. It's all about figuring out the right trade-offs. And I figured even if Go is new, it's not very mature. The community is really tiny. I was able to write this in a couple of days, the prototype. So and it has the right things, great concurrency. So we decided to write V1 of that program in Go, and I wrote it. We released it. It's been changed, rewritten completely 6 times. It's still in Go. So as I learned better Go, I rewrote it. And once we succeeded with this one program, then I thought it's a great language. Now we have hands-on experience, not just subjective whim, but actual hands-on experience. And then the rest of us in the team, we started learning Go. Multiple people started learning Go because we added it to a stack with the real life experience of having built and scaled one tiny thing. And eventually we started porting more and more things to Go, things that made sense to be written in Go, high concurrency services that handle like hundreds of thousands of requests a second. Go's concurrency primitives are great for that. So we ended up adopting Go into our stack in 2014, and it just sprawled. Go improved, the community improved, our expertise improved. We found more and more success writing more and more programs in Go, hands-on. We rewrote many of those programs from scratch multiple times. In fact, the entire trading platform backend, Kite's backend, got rewritten from scratch for the second or third time very recently. V4 internally went live, I think 3 months ago, because we learned more, we cleaned up technical debt, and as we learned more, we did that again. And Go as a language, it is so simple in its syntactic, when it comes to its concepts and its syntax, it just worked. And more and more people in our team easily picked up Go. Most people who knew Python, they were able to pick up Go easily and get productive in a week. And when you have all of these things on one side, all the pros, then you look at the cons. Yeah, generics. But it's okay. It's one of those things that we can live with. When you have so many benefits, objective benefits on one side, you got, let's say, slightly weak package management, no generics. These were trade-offs that worked for us. So with any technology, the decision, it's all about trade-offs. It's not like, oh, it doesn't have generics, we won't use it. But we'll use it, we'll figure it out. If it fits the bill, if it's the right tool for many of these jobs, we'll use it. And tomorrow, if there is another language that solves a lot of other problems for us or for me, for my personal projects, I look at that too. So Go checks a lot of boxes, and that's why we've used it. Right tool for the right job for many of these jobs.
Got it. Thanks for that context, and thanks for walking us back the whole history of how things evolve. By the way, one thing I've given to you, you're way too humble. Your scrappy and hobby project, it has 7,000 stars and 500 folks in GitHub. I don't know if I would call it as not a to-do list manager. It is popular, and it is, I guess, it's being used everywhere. And I wouldn't call it as a scrappy one. Maybe it is guessing. I'm guessing people are using it for production too. The Listmonk one you have as the first one. Is that one which you use as well?
Listmonk is a decent project. It's not the scrappy one I was referring to. My earlier projects were quite crappy as I was learning the language, and that always happens. And you rewrite, write, delete, refactor, and you get better at that language. So I wrote Listmonk after I learned Go enough to write, good enough apps. So Listmonk is quite a decent project. Yeah, we use it in production. Yes, we wrote it because we had an issue.
Decent. It is an amazing project. Is the only way I would call it. Thanks for that. And it's good to see you pick up a language at that stage, and certainly Go is one of those. Developers love building it in it. Like there is some developer delight it truly gives there as well. So totally understand like how you walk through this. And last question on the technology, and my last question from my side is on the mobile side of things. And you chose, Flutter over React Native, and mainly for the accessibility support. I'm surprised, like how why how and why like accessibility is such a critical factor which decided which can which influenced your framework of choice. So is this the only one? Is there anything else you found where Flutter worked well for React Native? Could you walk us through like how did these two frameworks and the decision why you went one way or the other?
Yeah, we didn't pick Flutter because it had accessibility features. It was one of the many objective factors that we were evaluating. And accessibility is important to us, but it is not the only feature. And why accessibility is important to us, it's just a part of our product philosophy. I'd say we try to make our UIs as simple as possible. We try to reduce like latency as much as possible. We want our apps to be easily usable, snappy, and we want to be as usable as possible, which means accessibility also plays a key role. It is quite unfortunate that in this in our industry, banking, finance, accessibility, I don't think it's even a term. I don't know if there is a single net banking app, which things that are universally used, that are accessible. I mean, they're not generally even accessible by people who aren't, let's say, visually challenged or whatever. And it would be extremely difficult for people who are differently able to access these things. So that whole segment of users that they're entirely neglected is extremely sad. So it's just a part of our product philosophy to make our apps, make our software as usable as possible to as wide a spectrum of users as possible. So that's why we care about accessibility. And when it comes to React Native and Flutter, this is actually kind of the same story. We built a native Java application. Kite's, our trading platform's first version, was a native Java application. That's quite all right. Then we wanted to build an iOS app, so we built it in React Native, hoping that we'd be able to, reuse the code base and ditch Java because we didn't want to maintain two completely different code bases. But we faced a number of issues. Early days of React Native, maybe today it's improved quite a bit. We haven't really looked at it, but we faced tons of issues. Releases that broke, inability to debug easily, slowness, rendering issues. You have to make 50 numbers on the same screen tick in real time. I mean, it sounds trivial. It's 2022. You can watch 4K videos, but a list recycler view or whatever it's called, I forgot, it would lag. So that's when Flutter came along. We looked at Flutter when it was bleeding edge alpha. I think the most sophisticated app that was built in Flutter was the Flutter demo app saying, check out the buttons, check out the radio buttons. So it was a very risky decision, but we looked at it objectively. We actually took it, studied it, understood it, built a prototype in it to understand how it works, exactly like how we done with Go 4 years prior to us, trying out Flutter. So we did all of that and gained enough technical confidence to realize that even if Flutter as an alpha project were to die, if we built Kite in Flutter, it would still serve us for a few years. And it was architected, it was open and architected well enough that some of the critical issues it had as an alpha project, we could fix ourselves. In fact, we've written a really long blog post. Ajin from the tech team has written a really long blog post on describing in great detail all these technical factors that we considered, and bit by bit, point by point, that really backed our decision. So Flutter was the right tool for the right job, and we arrived at that conclusion by building a prototype, understanding it hands-on, getting expertise in it, and only really took a few weeks to make that decision. And it was far superior to React Native when we made that decision, and we are very, very happy with that decision. And accessibility was one of those things, one of the many factors that played a part.
Got it. That makes sense. Adil, over to you. I know you have a bunch of questions. I'm guessing folks might have even asked as well. So over to you.
Yes, lots of audience questions coming in, and Kailash, we'd love to take a couple of them. So the first one is from Nirmalya Sengupta. She says, when you rewrote the core parts, which you earlier spoke about, what approaches, tools, techniques did you use to prove the correctness and zero regression?
Not really tools, just approach and technique. So you rewrite something not because there's something that is newer. You rewrite it because you've realized that these parts are bad and they just can't be fixed easily, or there is some fundamental flaw, architecturally flawed, so that your program is stuck and it can't be extended easily. So the decision to rewrite in any business is an extremely critical decision, right? It can, if done wrong, it can destroy your tech stack, it can ruin your business, it can waste huge amounts of time and money. So the most important factor here is arriving at that decision to rewrite. Is it even worth rewriting? Is it the right time to rewrite? That really is 80% of, and will this rewrite, what is the likelihood of this rewrite succeeding or failing? So getting there is really 80% of the thinking that goes behind a rewrite. Then you rewrite with whatever you learned. If you've decided to rewrite, that means you know that those things are bad, which means you know that what are the better things and what are the better things that you've learned. So you rewrite with the better tools that you have at hand, better code, better approach, better architecture, whatever you've learned. And once the rewrite is done, replacing an old system with the rewrite is yet another extremely critical and risky move, especially in a critical environment like ours. So what we tend to do is we rewrite in parts, separate modules, and rewrite those modules. And at a certain point, we, let's say 80 or 70 or even 50% of things are rewritten, then we gain the confidence to rewrite the whole thing. But we never really do a plug out and plug in release. It's just way too risky. It may be different and for different industries, but for us, we test everything heavily. We might delay a release by weeks or even months until we gain confidence. We have automated tests. We test from within the tech team. We get folks from outside the tech team to test. Then we do phased releases, 1% of the traffic, 5% of the traffic, 10% of the traffic, 50% of the traffic, then 100% of the traffic. So it's a series of these common sense approaches to minimize any potential risk or damage after you've made the most critical decision, which is to rewrite something. So it's really the approach, not tools.
Understood. Understood. Thank you for sharing, Kailash. Kailash, a couple of other things, right? What is an amalgamation of a lot of comments that has come in is people are very curious to know on a broad level, what is Zerodha's tech stack?
Common sense stuff. So we use a lot of Python. We started out with Python. We still use a lot of Python. All our performance critical services are written in Go. People say Go has a GC, C++ is faster, but I already explained that there are many other pros for Go that works for us. So right tool for the right job. We use Postgres database heavily. We use Redis heavily. More recently, we've started experimenting with ClickHouse for huge amounts of immutable transactional data. Extremely promising. So a lot of data we're moving from Postgres to ClickHouse because ClickHouse is better suited and for those kinds of data. And it's not like a 10 or 20% improvement. It's like 90% reduction in disk storage and let's say 20x faster query, stuff like that. So you have to evaluate and decide whether it's even worth switching. So absolutely worth switching for these things. And we use NATS streaming. We also use Kafka streaming. And these are really the key components that make up the hundreds of different systems that we built and that we run. We use Vue.js for our web apps. We had Angular. Kite was built in Angular, written in Angular first. It was a huge pain to deal with. Then we switched to Vue, and it's been great. Far easy to understand. Not as much spaghetti. Flutter for mobile apps. So that's really the big pieces of our tech stack. Everything else is, whatever fits the bill. We even have some Java in some places, some C++ in some places. Whatever fits the right tool for the right job.
Understood. So, last question, Kailash. A lot of people curious to know what is your hiring philosophy, and you have a very small, very agile, super team, if I may call it, of 30 people that is delivering massive impact. Someone wants to break into this 30-member team and join you and do even more cool stuff. How do they make it happen? What's your advice to developers who are keen to go have a shy at Zerodha?
Uh, we have again a bottoms up first principles approach in how we built the tech team. Uh, what I've seen in the industry, what's extremely common is that there's a startup, there are product ideas. They start by saying, we need 20 engineers for this, 10 front end guys, 10 back end guys. I have no idea how that works. You can't tokenize people into units and say three backend developers for that system, five backend developers for that system before you even build the system. So I'm completely unable to view software development in terms of the number of humans required. It entirely depends on the skill set, context, criticality. One person can sometimes build what 10 people can in a certain context, and sometimes you need 10 people to build 10 pieces. It all depends. This whole top down philosophy of saying we need X people in our engineering team, I have no idea how that works. That I'll never be able to work like that. For us, we need hands, we need skills to solve the tasks that we solve, the problems that we have at hand. When we started Zerodha Tech in 2013, it was just me. And I was going around sitting with people, writing Python scripts, uh, solving their problems. And there was no plan to hire. There was zero plans to do any sort of hiring, because hire and do what, right? You really need a clear roadmap, and you can't again say X programmers for this project before you even build the project. So at some point, I found my hands full. I was writing more and more Python scripts, and as those things solved problems, we found larger problems. And then we hired our first engineer. That was maybe 4 5 months after we'd started the tech company. And then we started working on stuff together. And at a certain point, we were like, oh, we have more work now. We need another engineer. And after a while, another engineer. So as and when we had projects to build, and the existing engineers, us, two of us, three of us, four of us, five of us, we found it, we were unable to handle that load. We got another engineer. And that's how the tech team has grown, completely organically, engineer by engineer, based on the actual work, business processes at hand over the last 9 years. So about breaking into Zerodha, I mean, when we need an engineer, when there is work that we feel needs another engineer, I know we'll post a job posting. That's how we've done it since day one. We'll never go out and say, oh, we need 10 engineers or 10 backend folks, or we can't think like that. We're very first principles here also when it comes to hiring. And 95% of the people who've joined the tech team have been absolute freshers, right out of college, no industry experience, no work experience, only hobby experience. And hobby experience is also valuable experience. And this is entirely subjective, just my view. I could be completely wrong here. I feel that hobby projects reveal a lot more than work projects, because you're doing hobby projects for yourself, for the joy of it, when nobody's really watching. So the stuff in your hobby projects reveals a lot of your personal philosophies. So most of the people that we've hired, they've been hobbyists, and they've all learned on the job. But no whiteboarding questions, no technical interviews, no invert this binary tree, no algorithms, no lead coding, none of those things. Just a casual chat, just look at their existing projects. Uh, a beginner will, of course, have beginner skills, but from speaking to them, from looking at how they approach certain, really simple tasks, you can figure out how they think, uh, how they look at work, how they look at others, how well they be able to work with others, and they can grow and learn on the job. Once you have the right attitude and vigor, you can learn stuff in weeks and months. So the whole team has really come up like that. We've This philosophy has gone wrong a few times we've had to let go, I know, 4 or 5 people over the years where this didn't work. But for the rest, everybody has been here. Nobody's ever left, and everybody's learned on the job, grown on the job. And as I said, when there is an opening, when we need something done and we need another engineer, we'll post an opening.
That is such a novel and fresh way of looking at it, Kailash. Thank you so much for sharing that. Absolutely love whatever you said, first principles, but you're actually putting it into practice, because we hear and we read about first principles and all of that, but rarely you come across someone who's saying, hey, I'm walking the talk and this is how I'm doing it. And not just today, I've been doing it for 5 years. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for teaching us that
Thanks.
you can build great tech like Zerodha has that can scale to millions of users with a very, very small and structured team. So obviously, huge fans, huge believers in the product, one of your early users. This was an absolute masterclass. Thank you so much, Kailash, for making time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for the invite. Thank you.
Thanks, Kailash.
Thanks, Hari, for joining in as well. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We hope you had a great session. With that, here's wishing you all a great weekend. And let's get back to business again on Monday. But until then, have a great Friday, everyone. This is good evening from all of us.